Greetings, welcome to Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show. This is a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So we're back here with the series that we've been doing for the month of March called Battle of the Bands. This is day 4, day 4, March the 4th, and battle number 4, which features 2 bands, Rose Tattoo from Australia and Point Blank from Texas. Both of these are self-titled debut albums, I believe. I believe the Rose Tattoo one is. I know the Point Blank one is for sure. Anyways, this album, this video will come out late today. I know most of you are expecting to see it at 8 this morning, but we had a storm here last night and I had periodical brownouts, so maybe 3 or 4 times before I decided to pack it in, the power would pop off for 30 seconds or so, but it was enough that it kind of ruins. When you're doing a video, it kind of stops it, so you got to start. So I had to start twice, so I decided, you know what, I'll just do it in the morning. I was getting tired anyways, and we'll just do it. It'll be a little bit late today, probably come out around noon or maybe a little after noon. Anyways, enough of that. Let's get on with the show, as they say. So we have 2 pretty strong groups here. Both bands probably should have been better known. Probably should have got better attention. I'm not really sure what the reasoning is behind why neither one of these bands had the kind of success that I see their music warrants here. Sometimes it's just a case of being not represented well, or it could be, I know in the case of Point Blank, they toured a lot, like over 200 shows a year, and I'm assuming based on listening to Rose Tattoo that they were probably in the same boat. For Rose Tattoo, because they were in Australia, they didn't maybe get as much of exposure to the North American scene as maybe they should have. So I'm not sure what the reasoning was, but both bands are pretty solid rock bands. Definitely as good as a lot of stuff that you hear on the radio now. Anyways, we'll get into them. They're basically kind of, both have a kind of similar sound to them, in the sense that they're both kind of that, they both have that southern kind of southern sound of American music that you get with like Leonard Skinner and ZZ Top and stuff like that. There's some elements of that in their music. I think a lot of it is because of the use of the slide guitar here, really gives it that feeling. So so they both have that kind of element to the music, but both of them have other elements to their music that aren't similar to each other. And I'll get into both of them. Okay, so I'll start with Rose Tattoo, since that was the band presented first in the list. So this album was released in November of 1978. And I think this band, if I'm correct, is from Sydney, Australia, formed in Sydney, Australia. So another Australian band. I'm beginning to see a pattern here with the Australian bands too. A lot of them are rock and roll bands, but a lot of them also have that kind of storytelling they like to do. It's like they go into this kind of bluesy kind of slow bit that they do, and then they tell a story. I've seen this with AC/DC. I've seen this with Dave Evans, and I think I've also seen this with the Angels. It may have been I can't remember the name. I can't think of the name. But anyways, I see this pattern with them, and they all seem to have it. It may be something that originated as an Australian theme, or they may have picked it up somewhere and somebody carried it and then everybody else followed suit. I'm not really sure how it went about, but it's unique to them. You do get the odd North American band that does this, but I never really noticed this until I started hearing stuff from this genre. Okay, so the Rose Tattoo album has 10 tracks on it. I gave a couple 5s, but everything else was above that. This is a solid album. I think I think their album ranges from okay all the way up to great. They've got a couple of tracks that are kind of like top of the line here tracks. For me, top of the line is anything over a 7. Very difficult for me to give an 8 or a 9 or a 10. It's a rare thing for me to do that on an initial listening to an album. So if you get a 7, that means there's potential for you to be greater. So, because you've only listened to it once, I just find that in order to give an 8, 9, 10, I have to have a lot more detail for the song. So I tend not to give 8, 9s, and 10s, but I have done it, just not very often. Okay, so they have, I gave 3 songs a 7. I'll talk about those first because they're the most important songs to me on the album. The Butcher and Fast Eddie, I like this story. It's almost like a folk tale. And I'm assuming that Fast Eddie was a Australian folk known, a guy known in the area where these guys grew up. It's a very heavy bluesy riff. It's one of those talking songs, which is, like I said, very reminiscent of Australian bands. They always do something like, pretty much every band does something like this. Not quite the same as this one, but nice. This is a good track. I like this track a lot. The Butcher and Fast Eddie, really, really solid track. The other 2 tracks, The Tramp, this is a heavy crashing opening with some very fast-paced rocker. It's completely different from Fast Eddie. And I found Rose Tattoo was very good at this. They could vary their music between this really fast-paced hard rock to some real slow, bluesy storytelling with stuff in between. Lots of slide guitar on some of their songs that give that real kind of that Leonard Skinner sound to their music, if you like. And the other song I really like on this is Astro Wally, which is the last track. Very heavy riff with some very heavy backing beats and a nice slide guitar here. It's kind of giving it that southern element. 38 Special is a song that it reminds me of. I don't think it's like 38 Special at all, but it just the slide guitar and the heaviness of the song reminds me of that particular track. This is a solid band. Note it that this album was produced by the George Young and Vanda combo, which is they produced this album, and it really has some good production sounds to it. It's very bluesy in a lot of areas, but it also has some real rock and heavy thing. I would say there's a party element to this music too. Some of the songs are very party element. Nice Boys. What's the other one that I wrote it down for? I've seen it, now I've lost it. Oh yeah, the one for the boys. They have 2 or 3 songs where they use the word boys. Bad Boys is the other one. Yeah, they got that kind of southern kind of party atmosphere to their music. Really, and as a whole, I find their album is kind of upbeat. Even though it's got that bluesy element to it, it has a lot of upbeat sound to it. It's that party element to it. Real catchy. This is a real catchy album. I like this album a lot. No bad tunes on here. Just some I liked better, basically. That's the best way to put it. But every song on here I listen to without that feeling of like, can we just get this over with? Sometimes, even if I like something a lot, and then if the whole album is like that, like you got 10 tracks that all sound pretty much the same, by the time I get to the last 3, I'm just like, can we get it over with? I didn't get that here. They varied the music in a lot of areas, so that you had some of that southern bluesy feeling, rock, the storytelling, the fast-paced, heavier songs, and some ranges in between. It was constantly mixing it up too, which then creates a need to listen to more. I never felt like I was wishing it would come to an end with this at all. And this was a solid album. I went as far as writing this down on my list of albums I gotta get. And I don't normally do that. Sometimes I'll go back over the week and say, oh, was there anything out here that I want to put on my list? And then, oh yeah, I should put that one in. I should put this one I put right away so I didn't forget it. Solid album. Okay, on to Point Blank. Oh, before we go on, I've not I think the Rose Tattoo, just so that because I'm going to set the stage for the Point Blank album. Rose Tattoo, solid musicianship. Vocalist is good for his genre. Fits in very well. Everything fits well. They are consummate songwriters. Their songs are all like notable, and I know that after I listened to them for a couple times, I'm going to remember them. You know, they got good memory status with them, so I just wanted to say that because I did forget to say that. So with the other band, Point Blank, self-titled 1976. At first it was a little confusion because there's also a Point Blank Canadian band, but I assumed as soon as I saw it was a hip-hop band, that wasn't the one he was breaking up. So it took me a minute to realize that. So anyways, I found these guys. These guys have about six albums released originally, and then they did some more later on. They got back together. The combination of Rusty, Christ, I cannot remember his last name, and the other guy, John O'Daniel, I believe it was, the vocalist. This is a really solid combo. I marked this down on my list for my next month's series, which will be those great vocalists with a solid guitar or a great guitar player. You know, I'm not sure what it's going to be titled yet, but I marked this down because I really enjoyed this combination of these two. So there's 8 tracks on this. I find these guys are heavy bluesy, much more bluesy than Rose Tattoo, I think. They do use the slide guitar quite a bit, which does give them that southern feel. So they're, especially the opening track, Free Man, very similar to Rose Tattoo's opening track in a lot of ways. They both have that same kind of southern feel. They both use the slide. It's very heavy bluesy. I thought, oh, these bands are going to be almost alike, but that's pretty much where it ended. From that point on, they differentiate. This band is a lot heavier bluesy. I think the guitarist, nothing against the Rose Tattoo guitarist, I think he's good. This guy's just very good. He's just very good. And the vocalist is better than anybody on either of the albums, I think. He has a range. I'm hearing a lot of Steve Walsh here. When I'm hearing him, I'm thinking Kansas on several of the tunes. I'm hearing that Steve Walsh vocal range. I don't think he necessarily sounds like Steve Walsh, although he does have some similarities to his sound, but he just has that powerful vocals. The album wasn't recorded as well here. The production isn't as good on this album as it was on the Rose Tattoo. I wouldn't say it's murky. I just found the volume of the album seemed off for a little bit. But overall, really solid, heavy stuff. The drummer did a drum bit on a song called The Wandering, which I thought was really well done. There was a really heavy guitar bit on that as well that I liked a lot. Yeah, and that was the first song that I started noticing the Steve Walsh sound to his voice. Yeah, guys got some real strong vocal sounds to his music, and different ranges too. The bluesy stuff, yes, but he also can really belt it out. I noticed when he's belting it out, his voice tends to crack a bit. Not crack, but it gets that scratchy sound to it at the top, which is normal. But when he's belting it out, that singing stuff, I'm hearing Steve Walsh all over it, right? This album didn't have any outstanding tracks for me. Like the Rose Tattoo had 3 of them that I thought were outstanding. This one had a lot of really solid stuff. Nothing really outstanding. I would say there's a couple tracks here where there's a soulfulness to their music, which is not, you don't get that with the Rose Tattoo. Their songs have a real soulful, kind of sad, kind of melancholy type of sound to their music. Especially the song "Distance," which was it had a kind of quiet opening, but a very melancholy sound. Really nice guitar bits in here. This guitar player, he is really good in that area, like just solid. I'm trying to think of his name. I know it's Rusty, but it'll come to me, but it might not come to me until the video's over. That's what happens when you're old, you know. You remember things and then you don't remember them, and there's no rhyme or reason. Yeah, so yeah, they really have a solid kind of southern sound to their music. They're much more in depth with their musicality, I guess is the best word. Like they do longer solos. They're more methodical. Their drumming is really strong. Musically, I think they're probably a little better than Rose Tattoo. However, the songs by Rose Tattoo, I think, are better. How do I want to say? Better constructed and better suited to their style, I think. I don't know if I'm making any sense there, but anyways, yeah, almost all the songs, if you look at my notes, they're almost all say the same thing. Heavy guitars, heavy riffing, heavy bluesy sound to them, really kind of methodical guitar soloing, lots of that. This guy has some excellent guitar bits on some of the tracks, especially in This World, The Distance, another one like that. He doesn't do as much slide guitar as they do on Rose Tattoo, but the parts he does do are really well done. He just doesn't do as much. He tends to be a little bit more on the guitar soloing part, and he does more lengthy guitar solos. Yeah, it's a really good combo. And the vocalist is the dominant part of their group. I think he is just so good. As it was going on, I think, this guy is so good, man. And makes sense because Steve Walsh is one of the best vocalists out there. And I'm not a huge Kansas fan, as many of you know. They take ridicule for it. It's not that I don't want to be. It's just that it just doesn't hit me, and I can't force something to happen that doesn't happen, you know. And because of that, I feel the same kind of thing here. I think Point Blank is a band that people, if you like that southern kind of bluesy, heavy, with fantastic vocals, you will love this band. You will love them, absolutely love them. And I can't see why you wouldn't. But for today, for me, I just enjoyed the Rose Tattoo album a lot. I just think that it resonates with my feelings about music better than the Point Blank does. It also has, I think the tunes are catchier and more relatable to me than the ones to Point Blank. Also, it's a much more upbeat, positive sounding album than the Point Blank one. Is a very good bluesy kind of sad album, and I'm not as big into those as maybe I was in the 80s. If this had taken place in the 80s, I probably would have chose Point Blank over Rose Tattoo, but their album, of course, I forgot to mention, came out in 76. It didn't give a month or anything, but it did come out in 76, and they released with this group of people, the three main guys here, the guitar player, the vocalist, and I think the second guitar player, because they have two. They were together from most of the original stuff. Most of the members of the band, I think, are gone now. Only the drummer is left. Anyways, it was a closer battle than it maybe sounds like it was, but I think that Point Blank was fighting a losing cause from the beginning. It just, as good as they were instrumentally, which I think if it was just based on that, they probably would have won. But Rose Tattoo, I think, is just a better all-around musical writing band and knew how to put an album together. And, you know, I don't know what this says, but I think George Young and Bonda, I think they just had more of an impact on this, and they knew how to put together an album that would resonate with people. I don't think they sound like AC/DC, you know, and I've heard this with some other bands. They do have that sound, and the guys' vocals are within that range and stuff, but I think they're their own sound, and that's what I like about them. This is definitely a band I will want to hear more stuff from, definitely. So Rose Tattoo will be moving on to this will be round number 2, and Point Blank, unfortunately, will have to take a side seat. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe. It's much appreciated. give me your takes on these two bands, how you feel about them. I like to hear, because there's a lot of people out there I know from listening. I've listened to a lot of these bands a lot more than I have, so I'd like to hear your take on them. Okay, so anyways, you have yourself a good day, and this will come out almost immediately after I'm done here. Okay, take care. Goodbye.